Today I'm excited to share how I applied David Goggins' relentless mindset to help my clients achieve over $150,000 in sales in 2 months. But before we dive into their incredible journey, let's talk about what makes David Goggins' approach so extremely powerful in marketing. David Goggins, known for his unparalleled determination, teaches us to push beyond limits and embrace discomfort to achieve extraordinary results. His philosophy isn't just for personal growth, it can transform how we approach business and marketing as well. In this video, I'll break down the key elements of David Goggins' formula and show you how these strategies propelled my clients' businesses forward. This client works in the music industry where he helps other artists build and monetize their music career. And a couple of months ago, he shared with me that he was spending a lot of time on 2 things. One of them being sales calls, meaning getting on calls with people and trying to convince them to buy from him. And the other thing was that people were very shy. Musicians, he said, they're very shy, they're very careful, they don't open up. So there's a lot of back and forth going on in the DMs because they're not direct. And so essentially, when we look at business, and let's switch to my whiteboard here, when we look at business, it boils down to some pretty simple and basic concepts. We have a way of getting leads that he was getting. In his case, these were musicians, and he gets them on Facebook, which is his platforms. These leads are exposed to content that nurtures them, which in his case is Facebook and TikTok. And then from here, they have a message sequence back and forth where he reaches out to them and DMs them, and they have a conversation about how qualified they are if they want to start a career, which then leads to a call where they decide if they want to buy from him or not. And he's doing a pretty good job, and that's the entire process in a nutshell. Now, there's 2 problems that we were having in his business. Here's where we decided to use the Goggins formula. When we took a closer look at his leads, and I said, describe your best ideal clients to me. I was like, okay, go through the people who've been your best clients in the past and profile them for me. Figure out what their job title was, figure out what their personality was like, figure out anything and everything about them. So we qualified them on multiple levels. One was sort of like the demographics, meaning what industry did they belong to, what stage of journey they were in. In his case, those people were from the IT industry. And then we looked at people from a psychographic or a behavioral point of view. And obviously they were action takers and they had a bunch of other things. They were able to tap into their creativity. They didn't have a lot of resistance and they were very open to being coached. Now we had a profile of the avatar that was the best person for him to enroll with. And we said, all right, are these the people who are ending up on calls with you? And he was like, no. By and far, the people who are ending up on calls with us are people who are new, they're scared, they're afraid, they've been taken for a ride in the past, they don't know if they have what it takes, etc., etc., etc. So we found out that the people here weren't exactly super qualified to begin with, meaning his lead quality was not the best. If we take a further look at lead quality, how do you determine high lead quality? Well, you have people at different stages of the journey. This is a person who wakes up one day and randomly thinks, well, what if I decide to seriously take up my hobby as a musician? Maybe he spends a couple of years thinking about it. Maybe he spends a couple of decades, and then he enters a state where he's more serious and he says, you know what? I do want to spend time, I do want to put effort, energy into this, and I do want to make this a possibility. Then he looks around in the market for what's available. Maybe he tries to do it on his own, maybe he fails, maybe he looks for a record deal, maybe he practices an instrument, so on and so forth. Then he eventually gets to a place where he knows he wants to be a musician. He knows there's stuff in the market that's out there to help him achieve his journey. He's ready, willing, and wanting. He knows that it's not going to be an easy ride. It's not going to be instant money. He's not going to have overnight fame. And now this person is primed. And so if we look at this is actually different phases of the journey for the same person. And so here, they're relatively disempowered. Here, they're somewhat empowered. Here, they're very empowered. And here, they're super empowered. And they've become the ideal person that this guy would love to work with and will get the results and will just, skyrocket throughout his program. Now we know that you're not speaking to people that you should be speaking to, or you're not speaking to as many of them that you should be speaking to. You're wasting your time speaking to a lot of people who are way behind. They're somewhere over here, or they're here, or they're here, but they're not here. So we need to speak to these people. Now, what do we do? How do we get more of these people on calls with you? And this is what led us to the Goggins formula. Now, if you look at David Goggins, right, he's a pretty cool guy. He runs, he yells at the screen, he motivates people, he inspires people, so on and so forth. But when we take a deeper look into his branding, into his messaging, into the way he goes about, he's speaking to a certain section of society. He's speaking to people who are probably relatively lower down on the ladder when it comes to sticking through and executing on what they promised themselves they would do. Now, if I were to take myself and think about, does David Goggins inspire me? Not so much, right? I've been working out for about 20, 30 years now. While I'm not the best example of leadership, I usually tend to fulfill on the promises I make people. So do I want a guy like David Goggins yelling at me across the screen, telling me to get my ass in gear? No, I don't. In fact, if anything, it's going to repulse me. It's going to push me away. It's not going to allow me to be attracted towards someone like Goggins. Can I relate to him? Yes. An earlier version of me would have loved Goggins, but today's version, not so much. And so we were like, cool. Goggins is very intelligent in his messaging. He knows exactly who he's speaking to, and he makes sure that his messaging is spot on. And so we were like, all right, we need to change two things in the way you acquire your clients. First of all, stop speaking to these people. Now, where do you speak to people? You speak to people here in your content. So we took a deeper look at his content. Now, his content was a lot of motivational, inspirational stuff. He was trying to convince people either to enter the musicians industry, or he was trying to convince them to take their dreams seriously, or he was trying to convince them to invest in themselves, or he was trying to convince them that it's possible and they too can achieve it. That sort of messaging speaks to the lower rung of the ladder when it comes to a musician's journey or a person who wants to become a musician. Their desire wasn't that great. Their belief in themselves wasn't that great. A lot of these people didn't even know what the market had to offer. Yet others of these people were trying to make it on their own, and they hadn't perhaps failed enough times to decide that they needed someone else to guide them or help them. For whatever reason, these people weren't ready to work with him. So we removed all of that from his marketing. We stopped using all the motivation, you can do it, I've got your back stuff, because that was attracting these people. And so we changed his content. It stopped being inspirational motivation, and instead we started using what I call assumptive marketing, meaning the person you're speaking to has already made up their mind they want to be a musician. The person he's speaking to is already ready, willing, and wanting to invest in himself and is actively looking for the right fit. So the person is sold on the end outcome, which is becoming a musician and monetizing their career. They're just looking for the right person to help them achieve that. That's a lot easier. Similarly, the second thing we did was take a look at his messaging. I see a lot of coaches making the same mistake. And so a lot of people use DMs to try and warm and nurture a person up and try to convince them that they can do it, etc., etc. Right? So there's two ways you can warm a person up, and they're both equally potent. One is content, one is DMs. The cool part about content is that content is 1:many, meaning if you're good at creating content that more people want to see, more people engage with, you can give one message and it'll be seen by hundreds and thousands of people. If you're not good at creating content, you then need to resort to DMs, which is 1:1. So nurturing, indoctrination, call it what you want, and excuse my writing, but this is 1:1, meaning it takes more time because you're trying to convince a person in the DMs to believe you, to take you seriously, to understand that you have authority, you have credibility, and you can deliver the results. It generally takes longer to build a private relationship with someone in the DMs versus building a public relation with someone through content. Now, these guys, obviously, they help artists go viral, develop careers, and monetize their careers. So these guys are amazing at going viral, and they're amazing at content. So for us, the highest leverage point was not the DMs, it was content. And that's why we changed content first. His content instead became a lot more empowered. Speaking to an empowered person, it became more matter of fact. It started repelling all the people who were, stuck in shoulda, coulda, woulda land, where they were thinking about their dreams and wondering and this, that, and the other. It was more like, are you ready to go? If you're ready to go, let's go. The next thing we did was we changed the DM strategy. And the DMs, again, They were making the mistake of trying to convince people, anyone and everyone, to get on a call with them so that they could then convince them on the call to buy from them. I was like, that's not what the call is for. The call is not for you to sit across a person and try to convince them of three things. One, the end outcome is achievable. Two, it's achievable through the program that you're selling and they have a great program. Three, you guys are the right people to help them in that program achieve the end result. That's a lot of heavy lifting to be done on the call, which is exactly what the problem this guy was having. So we were like, no, we're going to pre-qualify, and we're going to pre-qualify hard in the DMs, and no one gets on a call with you unless you already know that if they buy from you, they're going to be a fantastic, smashing case study. They're just going to skyrocket. And so what we did in the DM sequence was, instead of trying to, have like trick questions, which a lot of people do, or direct response where people start treating DMs as direct response marketing, etc., we changed the DMs into a more human one-to-one conversation and more factual and less emotional, more factual. Because that's one of the things we learned about his avatar. His avatar, his dream clients, while they were driven a lot through emotion, they didn't need any emotional leveraging in the DMs, any sort of trick questions. And so the DMs are very simple qualifying. Like, hey, good to meet you. Are you looking to build a career in music? Yes, no. No? Cool. Let's stay in touch. All the best with what you're doing. Yes, no. Same thing. Like, very matter of factual, very simple in positioning. Now think about Goggins. Goggins' messaging is very in your face. Goggins calls people out. Goggins assumes certain things about his audience. The assumptions are that his audience are fat, lazy, don't want to do anything, don't want to get their ass in gear, and he speaks accordingly. He uses profanity accordingly. In my client's case, we did the opposite. We assumed his audience were in gear, actively looking for, so we changed the languaging to go from trying to motivate, trying to inspire, to very factual. Hey, are you looking for a career? Hey, what sort of time do you have? We require this much time, etc., etc., etc. Are you a good match? Yes, let's go get on the call. Now, here's what happened. The thing that blew their minds the most. The call booking rate went down because they were speaking to less people. But the call closing rate went up, meaning they were speaking to less people, but they were selling to more people. So from the total pie of people that they were speaking to, we reduced part of the pie. We spoke to a lot less people. But all the people, they had an 80% close rate. Can you imagine going from 30% to 80%? All because of these two changes that we made to their content, speaking to a more empowered person, and their messaging, and refusing to book calls unless the person was qualified. And so I hope this helps you guys understand that, if things like the closing rate is bothering you, or the DM script, or any of these parts of the business are bothering you, you might want to go back and look at, are you even speaking to the right people? Because more often than not, most people start out speaking to the wrongest possible people, which then makes it hard to nurture them through content, which then makes it even harder. And that's why, I'm sure you get pitched by people in the DMs all day long, which then makes it even harder. And then the sales becomes this weird emotional dance of trying to guilt and shame and leverage a person. And it becomes a roller coaster ride that can easily be prevented if you got the lead right. And so in my client's case, the only things we changed were the lead, the content, and the DMs. We actually did nothing to the sales call. Well, the sales call was pretty much the same thing, except it shortened in length from almost an hour-long calls to 25-minute long calls. And so the beauty of the Goggins formula is that it's polarity marketing at its finest. Now, you can call it polarizing, polarity, or magnetic, because a magnet, keep in mind, a magnet repels and attracts at the same time. The right person will fall in love with that piece of content. The wrong person will get very offended. Just like a lot of people will get offended when they look at David Goggins' messaging, which is absolutely fine. In fact, that's what he intends for it to do. Don't be afraid to be more polarizing in your content. Don't be afraid to take a deeper look at the people you're actually speaking to. Because the moment you start repelling the wrong people, you also start attracting the right people. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you want more walkthroughs with a whiteboard style videos, and I'll be more than happy to make as many as you want. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what other topic you'd like me to talk about next. I'll see you in the next one. I'm out of here. Take care. Bye-bye.